He's at the door when you walk in, ears back, tail tucked, not quite looking at you. You already know the story. He did something. He knows it. That's the guilty look, and pretty much every dog owner alive has read it the exact same way. Here's the thing. This is Pet Mind Labs, and for the last 33 videos, we've taken one dog behavior at a time and asked what the actual research says about it. Not what sounds right, what's actually written down. 13 of those answers turned out to be the opposite of what almost everyone assumed, including us, the first time we looked. Not because anybody was lying to you, because nobody had translated it yet. So this one's different. 13 myths, 13 corrections. Every single one from a study you could go read yourself. Let's start with the one at the door. Myth 1. The guilty look means he knows what he did wrong. In 2009, researcher Alexandra Horowitz ran 14 dogs through a simple setup: a treat, a command not to eat it, and an owner who sometimes knew the truth and sometimes didn't. Then she measured what actually triggered the guilty posture. It wasn't the treat. Dogs who'd obeyed and dogs who disobeyed showed the guilty behaviors at the same rate. What moved the needle was scolding. Dogs looked guiltiest when they were scolded for something they hadn't even done. In her own words, the guilty look is a response to owner scolding, not an expression of actually being guilty. It's not memory. It's not shame. It's a dog reading your tone and bracing for what comes next. Myth 2. A wagging tail means a happy dog. A lab in Italy found something stranger. Dogs don't just wag. They wag lopsided, and which side leans tells you what they feel. More wag toward their own right side shows up around something they want to move toward. Mostly their owner. More wag to the left shows up around something they want to move away from, an unfamiliar, dominant dog. And other dogs read it. In a follow-up study, dogs who watched video of a left-leaning wag had faster heart rates and more signs of stress than dogs watching a right-leaning wag at the exact same speed. The wag isn't one signal, it's two, and they point in opposite directions. Myth 3. Dogs see the world in black and white. They don't, but they don't see it like you do either. Research out of the Neitz Color Vision Lab found dogs are dichromats, 2 types of color receptor, not 3. They get a blue and yellow world. The red-green axis that makes a tennis ball pop against grass for you barely registers for him. Red and green can both land as a similar, dull brownish gray. That bright red toy you keep losing in the yard isn't hiding from him. It's nearly invisible to him. Sorry to everyone who's bought a 4th replacement ball this year. Myth 4. Licking your face is his version of a kiss. Wolf researcher David Mech spent 6 summers watching a wild pack and traced this one to its root. Pups mob an adult's mouth to trigger regurgitated food. It's an inherited begging signal, not affection dressed up as affection. In dogs, it kept the job but changed the target. A 2018 study found dogs mouth lick more at an angry human face than a neutral one. A response to your emotional state, aimed at calming things down, not a spontaneous show of love. A 2023 study watching dogs greet threatening versus neutral strangers found the same lip-licking tracked with staying calm, not with affection at all. It's peacekeeping. It just happens to feel nice to be on the receiving end of. Quick one before we keep going. Tell me which of these 4 you already had figured out and which one surprised you. One word's enough. Myth 5. You have to be the alpha or he'll try to take over the house. This one has a strange origin story. The alpha wolf idea came from captive wolves, strangers, thrown together, fighting over rank the way strangers do. Wild packs don't look anything like that. When David Mech went back and watched free-living wolves, what he actually found were family groups, a breeding pair and their pups, cooperating, not competing. He spent years afterward asking people to retire the very term he'd helped make popular. Veterinary behaviorists who reviewed the dominance model in your living room found the same story. Jumping up, pulling the leash, taking the good spot on the couch. None of it tracks with a dog fighting you for rank. It tracks with excitement, with leash training that hasn't happened yet, with a dog who's simply comfortable near you. He was never staging a coup. Myth 6. He doesn't notice or care how other people treat you. He does, more than most owners assume. In one experiment, dogs watched a stranger either help their struggling owner open a container or turn away and refuse to help. Afterward, both people offered the dog food. Dogs avoided taking food from the person who'd refused to help far more often than chance alone would predict. Helping didn't earn extra trust, but refusing to help got remembered. He's not just watching what you do, he's watching what people do to you. Myth 7. His nose always wins. If he can smell it, he'll find it. Not against a pointing finger. In a study out of Budapest, dogs who just sniffed food hidden under a bowl seconds earlier were shown a person confidently pointing at the other, empty bowl. Most dogs went with the point, not barely above chance, reliably. The researchers' own phrase for it: dogs seem to lose their nose in social situations. Given a choice between what his body is telling him and what you're telling him, you usually win. Myth 8. A wolf, raised by people, would basically act like a dog. Researcher Brian Hare tested this directly. 7 hand-raised wolves, 7 dogs. The same kind of pointing task as the bowl study. As a group, dogs found the food using every cue offered. Wolves, cue for cue, never rose above chance on a single one. Individually, every single dog succeeded on at least one cue. Not one wolf did. Puppies as young as 9 weeks, some barely handled by people at all, already had the skill. It isn't exposure. It isn't raw intelligence. It's something domestication, built into the species, before the puppy ever meets you. That one still gets me every time. If you've got a rescue who seems to read you better than dogs you've raised from 8 weeks, that's not a personality quirk. That's a few thousand years of selection doing exactly the job it was built for. Myth 9. Your dog has the intelligence of a 2-year-old child. That line traces back to a conference talk, not a published study. There's no paper behind it. But the real research it got attached to is stranger and better. A 2017 study ran 552 dogs through 25 cognitive tasks and found there's no single dog IQ, 6 separate, mostly unrelated skill clusters. Not one general SMART score, but 3 specific skills: reading a point, a gaze, a reach, cluster together in dogs and in 2.5-year-old kids about 90% of the time. In chimpanzees, the same cluster holds together less than half that often, despite a much bigger brain. He's not a toddler. He's built to read you in a way even our closest primate relative isn't. Myth 10. If he really loved you, he'd always come comfort you when you cry. The comfort part is real. The always isn't the mechanism. In a 2020 study, dogs were put on one side of a lightweight door, with their upset owner on the other, and researchers tracked who pushed through. The single biggest predictor wasn't how distressed the owner sounded. It was whether that specific dog already knew how to open a door. Dogs with that skill came through the vast majority of the time. Dogs without it, almost never. If your dog doesn't come running, that's not a verdict on how much he loves you. It might just mean nobody ever taught him how doors work. Myth 11. He always knows his name, wherever you are. Not past a certain point. Researchers testing name recognition against background noise found dogs pick out their name easily when it's a touch louder than the noise around it, and still fine when it's dead even. But drop the name just a few decibels below the noise, quieter than an average city street, and recognition disappears completely, even in a quiet trial right afterward. He's not choosing to ignore you at the dog park. Past a certain noise floor, your name for him briefly stops sounding like a name at all. It's just sound. Myth 12. He has no idea how long you've been gone. 5 minutes and 5 hours feel the same. They don't. 2 independent labs, one in New Zealand, one in Brazil, trained dogs on short and long tones and found they consistently picked the midpoint between them, the same way humans, rats, and pigeons do on timing tasks. Separately, a study tracking stress hormones through the day found dogs on a steady routine have a real body clock. Levels rise and fall on a schedule, not at random. He's not marking your absence on a calendar, but he's not blank about it either. Myth 13, the last one. He failed the mirror test, so he has no sense of self. He fails it because it's the wrong test for him. The classic mirror test checks whether an animal recognizes its own face, and most dogs simply don't care much about mirrors. But in 2021, researchers gave dogs a completely different test. Stand on a mat that's attached by a strap running under your own body to a second mat next to it. To step off cleanly, you have to realize your own body is in the way. Most of the dogs figured it out on the very first try, recognizing their own body as the obstacle, not something external. The researchers' own conclusion. Dogs may not pass the mirror test, but they clearly pass this one. He was never confused about where he ends and the world begins. He just never needed a mirror to check it. So, back to the door. He's not guilty. He's bracing for your tone, because that's what worked before, and it's the only story he could build with the pieces he had. Same with the tail, the nose, the mirror, all 13. Not 13 mistakes on his part. One language, mistranslated on ours, one behavior at a time. You didn't get any of this wrong. You just needed the translation nobody gave you. Tell me, of these 13, which one changes how you'll read him tomorrow? One word is enough. If this is the first Pet Mind Labs video you've watched, the other 33 are sitting right there, one behavior at a time, and Pet Mind Labs will keep going, one at a time, after this. Next up, what actually happens in the 10 seconds before he decides to trust a stranger? It's not what you'd guess.